Thank you for watching Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Budner. Following are the news which have been reported by American, European, Canadian channels. Asian, African channels have also reported the same news. In the same manner, news agencies, writers, AFP, AP have also reported the same news. Now the breaking headlines. Israeli attack on food convoy in Gaza, killing 7 people. China's and Canada's relations are on the rock. Nightclub fire killed 29 in Turkey. Ukraine under attack by Russia, killing some people. American president spoke with Chinese president. Severe storm in central United States. A teenage girl killed by cops. Deadly home raid in United States. Sex trafficking charges. Biden and Trump view on abortion rights. Baltimore Bridge repair. On Wall Street, Dow Jones down, S&P 500 down, and Nasdaq down. Now the detail of headlines.
Tonight, Israel accepts responsibility for a strike that killed 7 World Central Kitchen workers delivering aid in Gaza.
Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg on efforts to rebuild Baltimore's Key Bridge and reopen the city's port.
If there's anything that Democrats and Republicans can come together on, it's supporting a part of our country that is hurting and getting infrastructure back the way it needs to be.
And Florida's Supreme Court paves the way for a 6-week abortion ban, but also allows the issue on the ballot in the fall.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by...
These are people who are trying to change the world. Startups have this energy that energizes me. I'm thriving by helping others every day. People who know BDO.
The ongoing support of these individuals and institutions, and friends of the NewsHour, including Kathy and Paul Anderson, and Camilla and George Smith.
Certified financial planner professionals are proud to support PBS NewsHour. CFP professionals are committed to acting in their clients' best interest. More information at letsmakeaplan.org.
The John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, fostering informed and engaged communities. More at kf.org.
And with the ongoing support of these individuals and institutions. This program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to the NewsHour. There have been few incidents in 6 months of war in Gaza that have created the level of outrage that leaders across 3 continents expressed today.
Overnight, Israel killed 7 members of the charity World Central Kitchen, 1 Palestinian and 6 foreigners, including 1 dual American-Canadian, as well as an Australian and Europeans. The president of the U.S. called the group's founder, the chef Jose Andres, to express his heartbreak. Israel called the killings unintended and vows to investigate. Nick Schifrin begins our coverage.
In the words of the World Central Kitchen, this was a targeted attack. A direct hit on the group's armored vehicle, incinerating everything and everyone inside. All that was left intact, a metal plate with the group's logo. They came here from all over the world to feed the hungry. They leave in the white body bags borne by this war's more than 30,000 victims. Among them, the group's Palestinian driver, Saif Abu Taha. This was all a mistake, said Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Unfortunately, in the last day, there was a tragic incident of an unintended strike of our forces on innocent people in the Gaza Strip. This happens in war. We are checking this thoroughly. We are in touch with the governments, and we will do everything for this not to happen again.
But World Central Kitchen says it coordinated with the Israeli military as a convoy left its warehouse in Deir al-Balah by the sea in central Gaza. Israeli munitions hit an initial vehicle. The Israeli newspaper Haaretz reports that World Central Kitchen workers then moved to another vehicle that was struck, and then a third vehicle that was struck as they traveled on or next to the coastal road that Israel designates for humanitarian aid.
Hello everyone, Damien Chagin from Cairo.
Damien Sobel from Poland recently showed a warehouse full of supplies to feed 20,000 Gazans.
Hey, this is Zomi and Chef today. We're at the Tirbalat.
While Zami Frankon was known by everyone as Zomi, she was Australian and in March showed off the World Central Kitchen's Gaza chef and the meals he prepared. Her friend said when others faced their darkest moments, she was a shining light of comfort. Last night, both their passports were covered in blood. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese.
This is just completely unacceptable. Australia expects full accountability for the deaths of aid workers.
Secretary of State Anthony Blinken.
We shouldn't have a situation where people who are simply trying to help their fellow human beings are themselves at grave risk.
Multiple victims were British. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak.
We're asking Israel to investigate what happened urgently because clearly there are questions that need to be answered.
The war in Gaza has been the deadliest ever for humanitarian workers. The UN says at least 196 have been killed since Hamas's October 7 terrorist attacks. U.S. officials cite poor Israeli coordination and deconfliction. Today, Defense Minister Yoav Gallant promised to establish an independent investigation and brief NGOs on the findings, and to open a joint IDF International NGO Situation Room. Chief Military Spokesman Rear Admiral Daniel Hagari.
We will get to the bottom of this, and we will share our findings transparently.
Back in northern Gaza, amid the ruins of Gaza City, lies the damage done to what was once Gaza's biggest hospital, Al-Shifa. The World Health Organization said today the heart of Gaza's health system had been ripped out. The Israeli military says a 2-week operation by its equivalent of Navy SEALs killed or detained more than 700 terrorists hiding within the buildings. The Palestinian Health Ministry says hundreds were civilians, and the UN says 20 patients died. After the World Central Kitchen incident, aid organizations are suspending their Gaza operations as the UN warns that Gaza is on the brink of famine. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Nick Schifrin.
For more on this, we turn to Sean Carroll. He's the president and CEO of ANERA. It's a nonprofit helping refugees in the Middle East. For the last 6 months, they've been delivering medicine, water, and food in Gaza, including some 150,000 meals a day. Sean, I just want to begin with your reaction to this news. What did you think when you heard about the killing of these World Central Kitchen aid workers?
I thought, no, this can't be. How can this be? This can't be. This can't be explained. It can't be. And then devastation. World Central Kitchen is a partner, their colleagues, their friends. The people who were killed are people that our team in Gaza work with. So this was devastating news.
And we should say, too, you and your team know this loss. Last month, you lost one of your team members, Musa Shawa, your logistics coordinator in Gaza, was killed in an Israeli airstrike after sheltering with his family in Deir al-Balah after he'd been out distributing aid. We are so sorry for your loss, but I have to ask, do you believe it's possible for aid workers to work safely in Gaza right now?
Well, look, we've made a decision to pause our work, and that's not a decision we came to lightly. Our Palestinian staff who live in the communities, who work in the communities they're from and live in, they've never really had safety, but they kept going. And now this level of depravity and inexplicable killing, and I know there are questions and debates about whether it was intentional or unintentional. I think we need to ask ourselves, is one better than the other? If this was unintentional, how could this happen? This was a clearly marked humanitarian aid convoy of 3 cars with World Central Kitchen logo and lettering clearly displayed. So how could it be an accident? And the evidence we've seen so far and what I've heard from our colleagues at World Central Kitchen suggested that it wasn't an accident, it was intentional.
Well, let me ask you about that, because Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has, in fact, said it was an unintentional strike. People in Gaza suspending operations for now. Mr. Carroll, thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
In the day's other headlines, President Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping spoke by phone in their first conversation since a summit in California last November. White House officials said the topics ranged from Taiwan to fentanyl to artificial intelligence. They described the conversation as, quote, candid and constructive as the leaders try to tamp down tensions.
We believe that there is no substitute for regular communication at the leader level to effectively manage this complex and often tense bilateral relationship. And both presidents agreed to pick up the phone and speak when needed.
As for Xi, China's state broadcaster quoted him as saying that Beijing and Washington should make stability in relations a priority. The president also hosts Muslim American leaders for a meeting tonight in iftar dinner, breaking the day's fast during the Islamic holy month of Ramadan. The gathering was reportedly downsized after invitations were declined by some Muslim American community leaders amid ongoing political tensions over the war in Gaza. Ukrainian military drones struck a major oil refinery today and a drone-making factory in what may be the deepest attack inside Russia yet. The targets were near cities in Tatarstan, some 750 miles east of Ukraine. Initial reports said the attacks did no significant damage. Cell phone video caught the moment one of the drones crashed, causing a large blast. An official on the scene said 2 people were injured. In Turkey, a fire at an Istanbul nightclub has killed at least 29 people. The blaze broke out today as the club was undergoing renovations while it's closed for Ramadan. Flames and smoke engulfed the site, and rescuers brought out the injured as the fire left the club in charred ruins. Istanbul's mayor said the city had never approved the construction work.
There's no application to the local municipality for renovation or construction, and as it was below the ground level, the repair work wasn't visible.
There was no word on the cause of the blaze, but several people were detained for questioning. Here at home, hundreds of thousands of people lost power across the nation's midsection as severe storms rolled through. In southern Indiana, some homes had their roofs ripped away, and Kentucky's governor declared a state of emergency as communities cleared through debris scattered by high winds. In northeastern Oklahoma, the storm front spawned 3 possible tornadoes. At least 1 person was killed. 4 more states had their say in presidential primaries today: Connecticut, New York, Rhode Island, and the battleground state of Wisconsin. President Biden and former President Trump have already locked down their nominations. Still, the contests are being watched for the degree of opposition both men still face within their parties. Anti-smoking advocates are suing the Biden administration over a stalled ban on menthol cigarettes. The administration had planned to outlaw the flavoring last summer, but the action had been delayed for months. The groups who sued today say in the meantime, tobacco companies are still targeting youth, women, and black smokers. And on Wall Street, stocks gave ground on worries that the Fed may opt for fewer interest rate cuts than expected this year. The Dow Jones Industrial Average lost 396 points to close at 39,170. The Nasdaq fell 156 points. The S&P 500 slipped 38. Still to come on the NewsHour, the fallout around rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs, who's accused of rape, sexual assault, and human trafficking. The evolving role of America's first ladies, and author Percival Everett on his reworking of the adventures of Huckleberry Finn from Jim's point of view.
This is the PBS NewsHour from WETA Studios in Washington and in the West from the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism at Arizona State University.
A massive cleanup operation is underway at the site of the deadly bridge collapse in Baltimore last week. Crews are undertaking painstaking tasks, removing sharp, twisted steel and concrete debris from the port. No one knows just yet how long it will take to clean up the wreckage and reopen the channel, but the Biden administration has pledged to help rebuild the bridge, and the president is expected to ask for more federal funding soon to make that happen. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is going to play a key role in all of this, and he joins us now. Welcome back to the News Hour.
Good to be back with you.
The Washington Post reported that rebuilding the Francis Scott
is not a destination. It is something that we have to continually work toward and reinforce.
That is Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg. Thanks again for your time and for your insights this evening.
Thank you.
Just last week, federal agents raided 2 homes of rapper and music mogul Sean P. Diddy Combs in Los Angeles and Miami. Combs is the subject of a federal investigation and already facing a series of civil lawsuits from several women and at least one man alleging he either assaulted, abused, or trafficked them. Some of the accusations date back at least 30 years, and Combs has denied all allegations. For the latest now, I'm joined by Sydney Madden, music reporter for NPR and co-host of its podcast, Louder Than a Riot. So Sydney, let's begin with those raids by federal investigators. What do we know about why they went in and what they found? That is Sydney Madden, music reporter for NPR and co-host of the podcast, Louder Than a Riot. Sydney, thank you.
Thank you.
Now to a major development in the fight over abortion access. The Florida Supreme Court late Monday paved the way for the state's 6-week abortion ban to take effect. But the justices, in a separate ruling, said Florida voters will be able to decide on a constitutional amendment protecting abortion access in November. Linda Bell is president of Florida Right to Life, one of the state's largest anti-abortion groups, and she joins us now. Thank you for being with us.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure.
What's your assessment of this decision? Linda Bell, president of Florida Right to Life. Thanks for your time this evening.
Thank you.
The First Lady of the United States is often studied with a mixture of fascination and scrutiny.
Laura Barone Lopez has more on a new book that looks at the modern history of the role.
Part policy messenger, part campaign whisperer, part style icon. Expectations of America's First Lady shape. She was super fascinating. Katie Rogers, this is a fascinating book. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It is one of the cornerstones of American literature, The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Now, a new novel takes another look and brings a little-heard voice to the forefront. Jeffrey Brown speaks to author Percival Everett for our arts and culture series, Canvas.
A trip down the Mississippi River in 19th century America, taken by a young white boy, Huck Finn, and an enslaved black man named Jim.
Who has built it for them?
The book is James Percival Everett. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Joan Wicks is a 6th grade humanities teacher in Los Angeles who helped her students rebound from COVID learning loss through her devotion and advocacy. The school was recently recognized with the California Distinguished Schools Award. Tonight, she shares her brief but spectacular take on inspiring a love of learning.
Literacy is so important in raising the next generation of kids because we've never had a generation that's about to face what they're facing. And I'm talking about something that we've taken for granted, working with these young minds and watching them grow. I keep coming back to the classroom year after year because I get as much from the students as they get from me. My name is Dr. Joan Wicks, and this is my brief but spectacular take on inspiring a love of learning.
And you can watch more brief but spectacular videos online at pbs.org/newshour/brief.
And while you're there, check out this story about the boom in tourists heading to Oklahoma to view next Monday's solar eclipse.
And join us back here tomorrow night for our report on major shifts in immigration following asylum seekers from around the world moving through Mexico to the U.S. border. And that is the News Hour for tonight. I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. Thanks for spending part of your evening.
Now the headlines for information. Follow it live. Follow the news. Follow France 24.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
More than 87,000 households in Taiwan are without power after a powerful earthquake of 7.7 magnitude. At least one person has been killed and so far 50 people injured. The threat of a tsunami has largely passed. Anger and disbelief as tributes pour in for the 7 staff members of the NGO World Central Kitchen killed in an Israeli airstrike in the Gaza Strip. The IDF has pledged an investigation. Ukraine lacks soldiers to battle the Russian invasion, now in its 3rd year. Vladimir Zelensky signs a bill to draft fighters into the army from the age of 25 when it was up until now 27. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. Let's begin this bulletin with these latest pictures we're getting from Taiwan, where a powerful earthquake has rocked the entire island with a magnitude of up to 7.7, according to Japan Meteorological Agency, that struck in the ocean near Taiwan. Buildings in the eastern city of Huanlin have been seen shaking and 2 have collapsed. The quake came at 7:58 local time in the morning. At least 1 person has been killed and 50 more injured. Waves were expected to reach large areas of Japan's southwestern coast, prompting an evacuation of the southern prefecture of Okinawa. But the tsunami threat has now largely passed. Our regional correspondent Jan Kamazund tells us how his day started.
people in Taiwan were woken up to the feeling of their beds shaking. I was, at least, as this earthquake struck just off in the Pacific Ocean to the east of the city of Hualien, which is one of the worst hit of Taiwan's major cities at the moment. There are local media reports of damaged infrastructure, videos being circulated of children being pulled out of collapsed buildings. As you said, there are 2 residential buildings collapsed. So far, we don't know how many people have been seriously injured or whether there are any people who have died as a consequence of this. But we have seen, as I said, also landslides on the eastern portion of Taiwan, which was most hit by this earthquake. We also got reports from TSMC, of course, Taiwan's major leading semiconductor manufacturer that is responsible for producing most of the world's advanced semiconductors. They said that they had to evacuate their production lines, but have said that their production will continue, hopefully, as normal.
Now to one of our top stories, a tragic case that will be investigated right to the end. Words of Benjamin Netanyahu after admitting that Israel's military unintentionally killed 7 aid workers in an airstrike in Gaza, despite clearing with the IDF the route the NGO was to use after unloading tons of humanitarian food in a warehouse. The group's CEO says he's heartbroken and has had to put a stop to food delivery in the enclave. There have been calls to immediately investigate the attack on the 7 staff members from World Food Kitchen. Most of them were foreigners. The international community has slammed this incident as appalling and reckless and demands answers from Israel. Sophie Lamott reports.
Crowds gather outside the city of Rafah to bid farewell to the Palestinian aid workers killed in an Israeli airstrike on Monday, alongside the 3 Palestinians killed in American, Polish, English and Australian workers. Israel's reportedly unintentional strike now resonates across the globe.
I spoke with Prime Minister Netanyahu this morning with a phone call that was organised overnight. I expressed Australia's anger and concern at the death of Zalmi Frankom.
As widespread famine looms over the blockaded Gaza Strip and aid workers are increasingly targeted, with almost 200 humanitarian staff killed in Gaza since October 7th, the UN denounces a collective punishment.
This is unconscionable, but it is an inevitable result of the way the war is being conducted. It demonstrates yet again the urgent need for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, the unconditional release of all hostages, and the expansion of humanitarian aid into Gaza, as the Security Council demanded in its resolution last week.
A call to protect civilians and lift barriers on the delivery of humanitarian aid echoed by the US.
The victims of yesterday's strike join a record number of humanitarian workers who have been killed in this particular conflict. These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it. They show the best of what humanity has to offer when the going really gets tough. They have to be protected.
The future of the desperately needed humanitarian assistance in Gaza is now in doubt, with the NGO announcing they're pausing their operation in the enclave following the targeting of their staff in Gaza.
It's a shadow war between Israel and Iran, and the latest strike on Iran's consulate in Syria by suspected Israeli warplanes just shows how Israel is on multiple fronts. At least 12 people were killed, among them Iranian military advisors, including 3 senior commanders, according to Tehran. One of them has been named as Mohammad Reza Zayedi, a top commander of Iran's Revolutionary Guards. Iranian officials have vowed a firm response, with Iran's supreme leader saying that they will make Israel regret the crime. Karis Garland has the latest.
It represents a major escalation in Israel's fighting with its regional adversaries. Suspected Israeli warplanes on Monday destroyed the consular annex of the Iranian embassy in Damascus. Tehran said several military officers were killed and vowed revenge.
The Zionist regime knows better than anyone that such crimes and violating international law will have its response in an appropriate time.
According to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, Mohammad Reza Zahedi, a top commander of its Quds force, died in the strike, along with his deputy. The Quds force supports Hamas and other allied militant groups like Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the Yemeni Houthis. Israel has long targeted Iran's military installations in Syria and those of its proxies, but the attacks have intensified since October 7. Monday's strike was the 5th in a week to hit Syria, a close ally of Iran. It also comes after an escalation in cross-border fighting between Israel and Hezbollah in Lebanon. Last week, the Israeli defense minister signaled the country would be taking a more proactive approach in the region.
We've turned from being the ones repelling Hezbollah to the ones who are chasing them. We reach all the places they're present.
The attack on the Iranian consulate prompted demonstrations in Tehran. Protesters burned Israeli and American flags and called for Iran to respond to the attack.
Earlier, France 24 spoke with Simon Lebon, lecturer at Lancaster University in International Relations and Middle East Studies. He explains how the Israel-Hamas war is expanding into a regional conflict.
There's a very clear distinction, I think, that can be made between the attacks that have been conducted in the previous weeks and months and what we've seen in the past 24 hours or so. In that the previous attacks were conducted against what had been referred to as Iranian proxies, or groups in Syria operating with Iranian support, whereas now what we're seeing is a direct attack, a direct strike on the Iranian consulate. And so there's a shift from a local sort of Syrian target to an Iranian target. And let's not forget that by targeting the embassy, by targeting the consulate, this is considered an attack on Iranian sovereign soil. So that is a direct escalation and a very different type of strike to what we've seen before.
Zelensky hesitated, but almost a year after the bill was adopted by Parliament, Ukraine's president signed into law a measure that lowers the age for military conscription from 27 to 25 years old. Now, in its 3rd year of war with Russia, the fighters are exhausted and have been on the front for a long time. Ukraine lacks soldiers, as Moscow calls out another 150,000 men in the new conscription campaign. This year, Russia has made gains on the battlefield in Ukraine. Laurent Berserker has the details.
Hoping to boost conscription and turn the tide of war, Volodymyr Zelensky on Tuesday signed a bill lowering the minimum mobilization age from 27 to 25 as Moscow continued its relentless shelling campaign. On Tuesday, a Russian missile hit the central Ukrainian city of Dnipro, injuring several people.
The doors blew up. They were just gone. There was glass everywhere.
A defiant Volodymyr Zelensky vowed a tit-for-tat response, hinting at his country's growing capacity to take the fight to Russia.
Rescue operations are currently underway in Dnipro after a Russian missile strike. In particular, a college and a kindergarten have been damaged. It's important that we respond to these Russian acts of terrorism, each time with longer-range responses.
Putting words into action, Kyiv on Tuesday carried out its deepest strike yet into Russian territory. Ukrainian drones attacked industrial facilities in the city of Yelabuga in Tatarstan, 1,200 kilometers away from the Ukrainian border. The strike was swiftly condemned by the Kremlin.
Ukraine is trying to transfer hostilities to our country's territory, resorting to acts of terrorism, shellings against civilians.
Meanwhile, NATO began drawing up plans to secure a 5-year military aid package for Ukraine. If approved, it could be worth up to $100 billion.
On the first leg of his tour in Europe, Antony Blinken held talks with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris, met his French counterpart and made a symbolic visit to a factory that produces military arms used in Ukraine. France is one of the main military suppliers to Ukraine, back in the United States. Congress is holding back for now the $60 billion aid package, but the Secretary of State says it's the key to build a strong Ukraine again. Take a listen.
We discussed the imperative of continuing to support Ukraine so that it can effectively defend itself against the ongoing Russian aggression. That's for today. But also to make sure, through the work that we're doing, to help Ukraine build a strong military for the future, to attract private sector investment so that it builds up its economy, and to continue to strengthen its democracy, in particular by moving down the accession path toward the EU. We are ensuring that we will have a Ukraine that stands strongly on its own feet, militarily, economically, democratically.
He's become Senegal's youngest president. Bassirou Diomaye Faye never before has held an elected office, but his populist mentor, Ousmane Sonko, was barred from the election and helped the 44-year-old sweep a first-round victory at 54.3%. Now he has been appointed Prime Minister, as our correspondent Sam Bradpiece explains.
It certainly hasn't been a surprise that the new president, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, has named Ousmane Sonko as his Prime Minister. Remember, President Diomaye Faye's campaign slogan was Diomaye Moi Sonko. That's a Wolof phrase that translates as Diomaye equals Sonko. Now, Diomaye only ran in this election in the first place because Sonko was deemed ineligible following a conviction for defaming a government minister. Diomaye Faye was essentially the plan B. And it was in a sense Sonko's popularity that won Diomaye Faye the election in the first place. He was a very little known figure beforehand. It was inconceivable that Diomaye Faye would enter power without appointing Sonko to a very senior position. It was really always on the cards. The two are inextricably linked and have been for some time. They're from the same party, they represent the same people, and they have the same vision for Senegal as a Pan-Africanist, protectionist state.
Too early to comment on the motive of a 12-year-old suspected to have killed a fellow pupil and seriously wounding 2 others at the start of the day in a school near Finland's capital. Police say the case is being investigated as a murder and 2 attempted murders. After a 3-hour wait, parents were finally reunited with their children. The pupil has been put in the care of social services because as a child cannot be remanded in custody. There are more than 1.5 million licensed firearms in the nation of 5.6 million people. That's it from me. Up to date with the latest. Stay tuned to France 24. More news coming up very shortly.
This Tuesday night, Israel's deadly airstrike on aid workers in Gaza. The 7 people, including a Canadian-American, killed while delivering essential food to Palestinians.
You do begin to wonder if that is not a policy of targeted killings.
What it means to charities trying to prevent famine, plus the worldwide outrage at Israel. New testimony at the Foreign Interference Inquiry.
I didn't see them.
What an Ontario MP did say about Chinese students bused to his nomination meeting. The threat of tornadoes hovers over millions of Americans.
This might be a tornado.
The powerful storms and the damage already done. And shooting star, the rise of Caitlin Clark, one of the greatest women's college basketball players ever.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. The situation in Gaza has become more dire than ever. The Israeli army has killed humanitarian workers delivering food to Palestinians at risk of famine. And aid groups say Israel has now made it impossible to operate safely in Gaza. These are the people who were killed. All worked with World Central Kitchen, a charity. It calls them heroes. 4 relief workers, a Palestinian, Australian, Pole, and dual U.S.-Canadian citizen, Jacob Flickinger, plus 3 members of the security team from the UK. One of their vehicles, clearly marked, pierced through the roof. 2 other vehicles were hit and incinerated. The charity says it coordinates its every move with the Israeli military, and the convoy was on a road they were told was safe. Israel's prime minister calls the strikes tragic and unintentional, but says this happens in war. Canada's foreign affairs minister posted that she's horrified and condemned the strikes.
We are heartbroken for the families and for the organization that has been putting people in harm's way to counter the extraordinarily devastating humanitarian crisis going on in Gaza right now.
Israel, already accused of restricting food to Palestinians, is now being blamed for cutting off another lifeline. Redmond Shannon has our top story tonight.
From inside one of the vehicles, it's clear
while the aid workers stood little chance. From above another, the World Central Kitchen logo is clear to see. What is unclear is why Israel would hit an aid convoy, especially since the charity says it had been coordinating movements with Israel's military. World Central Kitchen says the team had just dropped off 100 tons of food in a warehouse in central Gaza. Then all 3 vehicles were hit, spread out over more than 2 kilometres. One of the aid workers was a dual Canadian-US citizen.
Beautiful, fragrant, aromatic rice.
Alongside them, an Australian, a Polish citizen and a Palestinian. The other 3 were British. The charity says it has provided 42 million meals to the people of Gaza during the 6-month conflict.
We're asking Israel to investigate what happened urgently, because clearly there are questions that need to be answered.
Australia expects full accountability for the deaths of aid workers, which is completely unacceptable.
Almost 200 Palestinian aid workers have already been killed in the conflict, the vast majority with the UN's Relief and Works Agency, UNRWA.
So many innocent humanitarian aid workers have been hit by the Israelis, to the point where you do begin to wonder if there is not a policy of targeted killings of aid workers.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the killings were unintentional, but that this, quote, happens in wartime.
We will be opening a probe to examine this serious incident further. This will help us reduce the risk of such an event from occurring again.
World Central Kitchen has now paused its operations in Gaza, and its latest ship carrying food aid to the Strip has turned back to Cyprus. Meanwhile, UNRWA says Israel blocked one of its aid convoys from reaching northern Gaza on Tuesday. Donna?
Redmond Shannon in London, thank you. Thousands of Israelis were already furious with their prime minister, and tonight they marched to his residence in Jerusalem. Police struggled to contain the crowds. They're angry about a range of issues, including Benjamin Netanyahu's failure to get more hostages in Gaza released, failure to end the war, and they are demanding he resign. The U.S., Israel's biggest ally, provides it with billions of dollars worth of military aid and weapons, including the ones used in Gaza. A White House spokesperson says the Biden administration is outraged by the Israeli strike on aid workers, and though President Biden has repeatedly warned Israel to protect civilians, it seems to fall on deaf ears. Joel Senek reports.
Here we are, and we'll come back tomorrow, and the day after, until you are okay.
A pledge to feed those in crisis around the world, including in Gaza.
Hey, this is Olivia Shepherd. We're at the Jerusalem Kitchen.
This video taken from the World Central Kitchen's operations in the besieged Palestinian territory. The woman on the left, one of 7 victims in a fatal Israeli airstrike. World Central Kitchen is based out of this office building here in Washington, D.C. They declined our request for an interview on Tuesday, but provided a statement saying they are heartbroken and appalled by the airstrike.
The team of World Central Kitchen this morning were able to deliver 8 tracks.
The charity was founded by celebrity chef Jose Andres, who posted on social media that the Israeli government needs to stop indiscriminate killing and stop using food as a weapon. President Biden called Andreas to share his condolences, but the White House says Israel has not crossed the red line.
The more violent it gets for humanitarian aid workers, the less likely it is that they're going to be willing to take those risks, which means it's more likely that the people of Gaza are going to just suffer all the more.
This incident is different because it's come after many warnings. The United States has said from the beginning, how you fight this matters.
Middle East analyst Laura Blumenfeld doesn't believe the U.S. will pull its support for Israel's offensive over the fatal strike, but says it could be close to doing so.
Benjamin Netanyahu's ran on being Mr. Security. Part of keeping people secure is being smart. Not only strong, but smart. This just looks stupid.
U.S. officials are headed to the Middle East this week, where the world will now watch and see if Monday night's strike marks a defining moment in the conflict. Joel Senek, Global News, Washington.
Here in Canada, the Prime Minister is promising more money to address the housing crisis, including a new $6 billion infrastructure fund. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau claims his government is cutting red tape to fast-track construction, but as Mackenzie Gray reports, nothing can happen unless cities, provinces, and territories agree.
The Liberals' latest housing pitch aims squarely at the premiers.
We're not just going to put this money on the table, wash our hands of the issue, and walk away. We're going to insist that our partners make certain kinds of changes that make it easier and faster to build homes in this country.
The money and the changes are substantial. If the premiers want access to $5 billion worth of federal housing funds, they'll need to force municipalities to change things like zoning rules, to allow fourplexes as a right to increase density. Municipal development fees must be frozen for 3 years, and provinces will have to pass new laws to implement measures from the Liberals' proposed Home Buyers and Renters' Bill of Rights.
This is how we'll make it fairer for younger generations who feel like they're falling behind because housing costs are too high.
A sentiment shared by the Premier of Ontario, but Doug Ford doesn't agree on the solution. He's against the cornerstone of the Liberal plan, allowing anybody to build a fourplex.
It's off the table for us. We're going to build homes, single-dwelling homes, townhomes. That's what we're going to focus on.
An uncooperative Ontario will lead to tough negotiations with Ottawa. But while those take place, housing and affordability continues to hit all-time highs. A new report from RBC says the average Canadian needs to pay nearly 64% of their salary to own a home. And in Vancouver, Canada's most unaffordable market, that rises to 106%.
We've seen a sharp deterioration of affordability during the pandemic, pretty much across the board.
But it's not just a housing shortage increasing prices. The Prime Minister admitting his government's immigration policy push housing demand out of control.
Whether it's temporary foreign workers or whether it's international students in particular that have grown at a rate far beyond what Canada has been able to absorb.
Experts say any changes on either the supply or demand side of housing will take at least 2 years to make an impact on it, one that's sorely needed, with Canada's Federal Housing Agency saying new construction needs to triple from current levels.
Okay, Mackenzie, thanks. The public inquiry into foreign interference heard today from a Toronto MP, Han Dong, who, according to sources, is alleged to have benefited from Chinese support. Those allegations were first reported by Global News last spring. Dong has denied China ever helped him and has sued Global News and individual reporters. That lawsuit remains unresolved. David Aiken reports on how the commission zeroed in on the threat from China and how intelligence officials warned of the Chinese government's tactics.
Sir, do you accept that the People's Republic of China is attempting to interfere in Canadian democracy? I've seen reports about that. I personally haven't seen any evidence of it.
But this inquiry has heard evidence that CSIS believes Chinese state actors helped Han Dong win the 2019 Liberal nomination. The allegations center on a group of international students from China that were bused to the nomination meeting and told how to vote. On the stand, Dong was asked what he knew about that.
I didn't see them.
How many students were involved?
I don't remember. It's very vague.
Or who commissioned the bus?
I don't remember.
And yet, Dong informed the inquiry just yesterday that his wife paid for 2 buses, something he did not tell the inquiry when its lawyers interviewed him 6 weeks ago.
It's heavily redacted.
Indeed, a CSIS report tabled as evidence at the inquiry alleges the Chinese government orchestrated the plan to bus the students to the nomination because, again, according to CSIS, Dong was China's preferred candidate. That allegation has not been proven in court, but a declassified CSIS document entered as evidence at the inquiry says this is one key way China interferes in Canada's democracy, by supporting candidates they believe are sympathetic to Beijing. The declassified secret memo said China is, quote, our biggest concern. And it goes on to say the PRC, or People's Republic of China, is highly capable and motivated against Canada, and that their activities often transcend political party lines and may involve supporting many candidates who promote PRC views. Dong was also asked about a phone call he had with a Chinese diplomat about the 2 Michaels, then still in captivity in China. The inquiry's lawyers walked Dong through notes that CSIS made of a recording of that call. Dong was unable to answer specific questions about what he is alleged to have told the Chinese diplomat.
Well, it's possible. I mean, I don't recall saying that exactly, right, but it's possible.
David's with me now. David, what exactly was alleged in the CSIS document entered as evidence about the 2 Michaels?
Well, first of all, Donna, this CSIS summary has not been accepted as fact, and Commission Counsel noted that today, that these are still allegations. But the CSIS summary said that in that phone call, one of the points was Dong was making a partisan consideration surrounding the release of the 2 Michaels, and Dong observed that if the government of China released the 2 Michaels, quote, at that moment, end quote, it would give the opposition parties, or they would see it as proof of the usefulness of a hardline approach on China. Now, Dong has always said he was only ever thinking of the quickest way to release the 2 Michaels, and when Global News first reported on this conversation last year, Dong resigned from the Liberal caucus, and he still sits as an independent despite expressing a wish to rejoin the Liberals. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken in Ottawa, thank you. In Edmonton, an 11-year-old boy has been killed after being attacked by 2 large dogs. Police say they were called to a home last night where they found the severely injured boy. They attempted life-saving measures, but the boy was pronounced dead at the home. The 2 dogs were seized by animal control officers. It's believed they belong to a person who lives at the residence the boy was visiting. Troubling allegations from 2 Indigenous fishermen. Coming up, how they say federal fisheries officers mistreated them. In Nova Scotia, serious allegations from 2 Indigenous fishermen have Mi'kmaq chiefs calling for immediate action from federal fisheries and oceans. The men say fisheries officers left them at a gas station late at night without their shoes, cell phones, or a way to get home. They've been apprehended for fishing for baby eels, a fishery that is closed this season. As Heidi Petrachik reports, the men say they were exercising their treaty right to fish. Mi'kmaq voices drowned out Justin Trudeau's Halifax area housing announcement, angered by allegations of racism.
Obviously, this story is extremely troubling, which is why there is a need for a full investigation on this.
Earlier, Mi'kmaq supporters pushed into a fisheries office as tensions around the lucrative maritime elver fishery, shut down by Ottawa this year, ramp up. Blaise Syllaboy and Kevin Hartling now at the center of it all, after they say they were arrested by fishery officers for exercising what they believe to be their treaty right to fish baby eels last week on Nova Scotia's South Shore. Instead of being taken to the nearby fisheries office, they say the officers took their boots and cell phones and stranded them at this gas station in the middle of the night.
When they left us with no shoes, I kind of devastated. I told him, man, this is outrageous. You're leaving me with no shoes. He said, you know the consequences.
Hours from home, the pair say they watched throughout the night looking for a hotel that was actually 66 kilometers away. Friends eventually found them at daylight at this convenience store.
Well, it reminds me of the Saskatchewan cases where the police were dropping the Indigenous people off late at night and they were dying. They were freezing to death.
The federal fisheries minister acknowledges an incident, quote, involving the arrest and release of 2 individuals and says DFO has launched an investigation. But after the men posted photos of their torn socks and blistered feet online, there's anger, and Mi'kmaq chiefs are calling for accountability.
The first thing we're looking for is for those individuals who are responsible to immediately be fired.
Chiefs throughout the province also want an emergency meeting with fisheries officials to talk about what they call an example of systemic racism. Heidi Petrachik, Global News, Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Packing a punch ahead, a dangerous storm system sweeping through the central U.S. There has been a school shooting in Finland. A 12-year-old is dead and 2 others are injured. Police say it happened inside a classroom and the suspect, also 12, ran off. He was detained about 4 kilometers away. The shootings are being investigated as murder and attempted murder, and a national day of mourning will be observed in Finland tomorrow. In the U.S., tens of millions of people are under severe weather warnings as potentially dangerous storms roll through large swaths of that country. In the Midwest, a severe thunderstorm brought damaging winds and reports of at least 5 tornadoes. That triggered a state of emergency in Kentucky, where heavy damage has been reported. Thousands remain without power. Further south, heavy rain has led to flash flooding, forcing some people to be rescued from their homes. The National Weather Service says the threat of severe weather will remain overnight for millions of people in the central United States. Crews in Baltimore have now opened a second temporary channel, allowing limited maritime traffic to bypass the wreckage of last week's bridge collapse. Work is also underway to open a deeper third route for larger vessels. A timeline on its completion is not clear. Weather has slowed efforts to recover the bodies of 4 workers who were fixing potholes on the bridge when it collapsed. They're believed to be trapped under the bridge wreckage. Transcendent talent next, how Caitlin Clark is taking over college basketball.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Earl Cannonbear, along with Floyd Robertson here at Election Central. And Floyd, let's take a look at some of those returns. Earl, the polls closed 3 minutes ago. There are no returns yet.
I feel ya. He could really nail some roles. That is comedian Joe Flaherty, spoofing the role of news anchor Floyd Robertson alongside Eugene Levy on SCTV. Flaherty has died at the age of 82 after a brief illness. He was a founding member of that fantastic Canadian sketch series and a staple in television comedies through the 80s and 90s. He also made people laugh on the big screen. One of his most recognizable roles was perhaps the heckler from Happy Gilmore.
Jackass. Whoa! The club went further than the ball.
On Instagram, Adam Sandler said today he worshipped Joe growing up, calling him a genius of a comedian and a true sweetheart. Well, March Madness is the biggest college basketball tournament in the world. It's only fitting the sport's biggest star is shining brighter than ever this month. Caitlin Clark is her name. She's a senior at the University of Iowa. Her jaw-dropping performances are drawing record-breaking crowds and TV ratings. Tickets for Clark's games are even selling for more than some men's games. Eric Sorensen looks at how she's becoming the face of college basketball.
Pity the play-by-play announcer looking for new ways to describe Caitlin Clark's basketball prowess. Maybe the best three-point shooter in the history of college basketball. Clark's all-around game has carried the University of Iowa to the Final Four for the second year in a row. For the coach she defeated Monday night,
she's just a generational player, and she just makes everybody around her better.
she is selling out arenas, inspiring a new generation of fans who want to be like her.
We're excited to see Caitlin Clark.
What do you want to be like when you get older?
Caitlin Clark.
Caitlin Clark has broken so many scoring records. Last month, she topped Pete Maravich for career points, man or woman, in college basketball. She now has 3,900 points and counting. But she's also setting records in other ways, with audiences. Iowa's game in last year's championship was watched by almost 10 million viewers, double the previous year. Clark herself was reportedly offered $5 million to join Big Three, another basketball league. Is it all a distraction for her?
To be honest, I found out about the Big Three thing the same exact time you all did. And my main focus is on just playing basketball. I think that's the biggest thing.
People are paying attention, not only to women's basketball, to women's sports in general.
She can hardly accommodate all the autograph seekers, the cameras, the media questions.
Women's basketball is never seen to this extent in terms of also popularity tied with her talent, but they're also transcending sport viewership in many ways because of just how electrifying, how good the basketball is.
Caitlin Clark will turn professional this year, where she could give another boost to the WNBA. But first, she has a college championship to play for this weekend, and more people than ever will be watching. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Tuesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is this bird's eye view of Calgary. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
DemocracyNow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Chef Jose Andres' World Central Kitchen has suspended aid operations in Gaza after an Israeli airstrike killed 6 international workers from the charity and a Palestinian driver. The aid workers were struck after they left a warehouse in Deir Abala, where they had unloaded more than 100 tons of food aid that had been brought into Gaza by ship from Cyprus. The aid workers were driving in a clearly marked convoy branded with the charity's logo. World Central Kitchen said the attack occurred even though they coordinated in advance with the Israeli military. Aaron Gore, the CEO of World Central Kitchen, said, quote, "This is not only an attack against WCK, this is an attack on humanitarian organizations showing up in the most dire of situations where food is being used as a weapon of war. This is unforgivable," unquote. Earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu acknowledged Israel carried out the attack, saying, quote, "Unfortunately, over the last day, there was a tragic incident of an unintended strike of our forces on innocent people in the Gaza Strip," he said. The killed aid workers include 3 British nationals, an Australian, a Polish national, and an American-Canadian dual citizen. 2 of the aid workers were filmed inside Gaza prior to the attack.
Black lemon, there is a chili, certain mixed spices, LA, salt, pepper, and tomato paste.
Indeed, so this is the beautiful, fragrant, aromatic rice that will be served today from Deir Abala Kitchen. Thank you.
Both of those aid workers are now dead. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he was shocked and saddened by the attack. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also condemned the attack and demanded accountability from Israel.
This is a human tragedy that should never have occurred. That is completely unacceptable.
The official death toll in Gaza is now approaching 33,000 as Israel continues its assault in defiance of last week's UN Security Council ceasefire resolution. In Rafah, an Israeli airstrike killed 4 people, including 2 children. Meanwhile, Reuters is reporting the Biden administration is considering a new $18 billion arms package for Israel that would include dozens of F-15 aircraft. This is in addition to the recent U.S. approval of 1,800 2,000-pound bombs and 500 500-pound bombs, as well as 25 F-35 fighter jets. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says he will ban the award-winning TV network Al Jazeera after Israeli lawmakers passed a bill allowing for the temporary banning of foreign broadcasters deemed to be a national security threat. Al Jazeera is the most widely viewed network in the Arab world and is one of the few outlets to have reporters inside Gaza. Iran has vowed to retaliate after Israel bombed the Iranian consulate in Damascus, Syria, killing at least 7 people, including 3 senior Iranian commanders and at least 4 other Iranian officers. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said the death toll could be as high as 11. Mohammad Reza Zahedi, a senior commander in the Al-Quds force, he is said to be the highest-ranking Iranian military officer to be killed since the U.S. assassinated General Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad in 2020. Iran's ambassador to Syria, Hossein Akbari, condemned Israel for striking a diplomatic building.
We told you before, the Zionist entity knows very well that such crimes and any kind of crimes will not remain without response.
Primary elections are being held today in Wisconsin, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New York. In Wisconsin, activists are urging voters to cast their ballots for uninstructed. Inspired by Michigan's Uncommitted campaign, Palestinian rights advocates, union members, and low-wage and immigrant workers have rallied behind the push to vote uninstructed, an option on Wisconsin ballots that allows delegates to make their picks at the party conventions rather than selecting a preferred candidate at the polling site. Here in New York, the Leave It Blank campaign similarly urges Democrats to voice their opposition to Biden's support for Israel's assault on Gaza by withholding their vote and submitting a blank ballot. The initiative is backed by the Working Families Party, If Not Now, Jewish Voice for Peace, Empower Action, Sunrise Movement, and other groups. The Florida Supreme Court issued 2 critical decisions on abortion Monday. In a major blow for abortion access across the southern United States, Florida's highest court ruled abortion rights are not constitutionally protected, allowing a near-total abortion ban to go into effect. The 6-week ban provides exceptions for rape, incest, fetal anomalies, and medical emergencies. But reproductive rights advocates hope the legislation will be short-lived, since the Florida Supreme Court also ruled Monday a referendum enshrining the right to an abortion in the state's constitution can appear on the November ballot. The Florida Supreme Court also okayed a ballot initiative to legalize recreational marijuana. The ballot measures require a 60% majority to pass. In Germany, a new law went into effect Monday legalizing the personal possession of up to 25 grams of cannabis. It also allows individuals to cultivate up to 3 marijuana plants at home. Cannabis will remain illegal for anyone under 18, as some health professionals warn the new legislation could increase smoking among young people. At midnight Monday, people gathered at Berlin's Brandenburg Gate for a smoke-in to celebrate.
If you really go into education instead of criminalization, then that's the right way to go now. I think you can definitely bring awareness to it, because no matter what kind of consumption it is, alcohol, marijuana, maybe other things too, the most important thing is always safer use and harm reduction. So always make yourself aware of what is actually a healthy dose. The dose makes the poison.
Deadly violence continues to plague Haiti as armed groups and police trade more gunfire overnight Monday in Port-au-Prince. At least 5 people were killed.
I got a phone call this morning. They told me that my father had died. I was astonished, and when I arrived, I saw him lying on the floor.
The spiraling political turmoil in Haiti appears to have no end in sight. Recently resigned Prime Minister Ariel Henry, who remains locked out of Haiti by the armed groups, raised questions this week over the constitutionality of a transitional council, which is being formed to serve as an interim governing body until elections are scheduled. This comes as Canadian forces have been sent to Jamaica to train troops from Caribbean nations to join the UN-authorized mission to Haiti. Last week, the UN human rights chief called for an arms embargo on Haiti, calling the situation there cataclysmic. The majority of guns pouring into Haiti are smuggled in from Florida and other parts of the United States. New York Judge Juan Merchan expanded a gag order on Donald Trump Monday ahead of his April 15th criminal hush money trial, barring Trump from attacking the judge's family members. Among other things, Trump called Merchan's daughter a, quote, rabid Trump hater and shared a photo of her on social media. Meanwhile, Trump posted a $175 million bond in a civil fraud case Monday as he appeals the $464 million judgment against him. The bond is underwritten by the California-based Knight Specialty Insurance Company. The company is owned by billionaire Don Henke, who's been dubbed the king of subprime car loans and is the largest shareholder in Axos Bank, which has provided financial services to Trump and Jared Kushner's family businesses. And the 2024 Izzy Award for Outstanding Achievement in Independent Media will be shared by In These Times and journalists Mohammed El-Kurd, Lindsay Billing, Trina Reynolds-Tyler, and Sarah Conway. The award this year recognizes In These Times on worker-centered economic justice stories. Mohammed El-Kurd is the nation's first ever Palestine correspondent and wrote many things, the right to speak for ourselves. Lindsay Billing chronicled the American military's environmental devastation in Afghanistan for Inside Climate News. Trina Reynolds-Taylor and Sarah Conway produced the 7-part series Missing in Chicago, which exposed police malpractice in the handling of missing persons cases disproportionately affecting black women and girls. And Democracy Now! Is receiving special recognition for our coverage of the ongoing war on Gaza. The Izzy Award is named for the dissident journalist Iyap Stone, that's Izzy Stone, and is presented by the Park Center for Independent Media at Ithaca College. And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman in New York, joined by Democracy Now! Co-host Juan Gonzalez. Hi, Juan.
Significant national security concerns that have to be met. But you said something really good in your question that I loved, that while these concerns are going on, the bill languishes. So what's needed? It's not anything more from the president. What's needed is for Speaker Johnson to do his job and get that thing on the floor. Let's get it voted on. They had a chance and decided not to act because certain people in House Republican world wanted a problem rather than a solution.
As the person in charge of preventing a terrorist attack in the homeland, does President Biden think that some of these border crossers could be in the United States right now plotting a terrorist attack?
The president's confident that throughout the interagency, DHS, intelligence community, that we're doing everything we can to be as vigilant as we can to ensure the safety and security of the American people here at home.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling announcements.
I love you so. Happy Tuesday, everybody. All right, today is Children's Picture Book Day, so that's why no one could reach President Biden. The Department of Health and Human Services says doctors must obtain informed consent before performing a prostate exam. I wish someone told my dentist that. Nearly 1/3 of Americans don't know viewing a solar eclipse with a naked eye can permanently damage their vision. There's only one other thing you can see that poses the same danger. Over the weekend, 4 inches of rain in Southern California set a new 2-year total, not seen since the late 1800s. There was so much rain in LA, Governor Newsom had to move Tom Cruise to higher ground. Texas Health Services are raising the alarm after a person tested positive for bird flu. Since it's Texas, he was immediately served with coleslaw and cornbread. Scientists in Portugal accidentally created a mouse embryo with 6 legs and no genitals. 6 legs and no genitals? Sounds like Green Day.
Oh. Shots fired. I like that.
A man walking on a Cayman Islands beach discovered a bottle that contained a handwritten message. Here's what it said. Not really a joke there, but okay. Forbes just released the list of the world's billionaires, or as I call it, my list of people to kidnap. The new study found that male menopause is real, so that's why I'm unable to get pregnant. All right. So over the weekend, NBC News, which stands for nothing but crap, published a story titled, "They Came for Florida's Sun and Sand. They Got Soaring Costs and a Culture War." And it's a masterpiece of cherry picking, or orange picking since it is Florida, which means it's time for...
Reporters are coming around, and your narratives is what they demand. So they'll twist all the facts, cause in the media that's the plan. To only tell half of the story, the data they pick and they choose. A desperate attempt to make dollars and cents by lying to viewers like you on the news.
Mentally ill. As we all know, since the pandemic, people are flocking to Florida like Lizzo to a food truck. But did you know that not everybody is glad they did? Says NBC, while hundreds of thousands of new residents have flocked to the state on the promise of beautiful weather, no income tax, and lower costs, nearly 500,000 left in 2022. Contributing to their move was a perfect storm of soaring insurance, a hostile political environment, worsening traffic, and extreme weather. They got all that from interviewing 12 people. Yeah, 12 people who left the state in the past 2 years. But sadly, the writer also had to admit that Florida is the second fastest growing state as of July 2023, meaning that many more moved in than actually moved out. So as Stephen Green at PJ Media says about this dopey piece, it's like claiming that a restaurant is losing customers by only counting the people who have paid their checks and walked out the door. Now, of course, that would kill any story about a so-called exodus, but it didn't. Instead, NBC found a few people to tell their sob stories. One woman who moved to Florida from Connecticut in 2021 complained she didn't know it would be 100 degrees at night. First of all, when is 100 degrees not the perfect sleeping temperature for women? Oh, I'm so cold. That should be on the epitaph on the tombstone of every woman who ever lived. But that's right, she didn't know it would be so hot in Florida. You know, you'd think the motto on their license plates would have tipped her off. It's the sunshine state, not the pitch black dark state, you dip. It's why part of the state is called the Panhandle, and where anybody living there over the age of 30 has more facial wrinkles than a Shar-Pei's balls dipped in ice water. Plus, did you know that there's a lot of traffic? Who knew that other than everybody? I got news for you, lady. When the age of the average driver is 84 on any road in America, there's going to be congestion. See, when she moved to Florida, she didn't realize it would be Florida. She's like that easily offended comedy club audience member who didn't read up on the headliner and is mad that the comedian's sense of humor doesn't mirror her own, so she walks out. NBC News also cites consumer prices and insurance rates. Imagine that. A place that's becoming more popular is also becoming more expensive. Meanwhile, in California, you can Airbnb the Oakland Coliseum for $85 a night. And did you know that if you live in Florida, your home might be damaged by a hurricane? Why didn't someone tell these people Florida has hurricanes? If only Florida sports teams gave us a hint, right? Oh yeah, the Miami Hurricanes field 16 teams, baseball, basketball, football, even women's soccer, and that's not even real. One guy said he felt unsafe because everyone walks around with guns there. Oh dear God, Florida likes guns. Well, you would be too if you were sandwiched between Haiti and Georgia. Hasn't this dude ever seen an episode of Cops? You think it's a coincidence every other episode was shot in Broward County? I just hear that name and I start flushing drugs down the toilet. NBC News also reports Floridians are fleeing the state over its increasingly conservative policies, including a crackdown on undocumented immigrants, a ban on transgender care for minors, state interventions in how race, slavery, and sexuality are taught in schools. In other words, more laws are enforced, children aren't sterilized for playing with the wrong toys, and people don't assume you're racist for being white, meaning the only people fleeing are liberal dip who didn't belong there in the first place. Fleeing the state is just another way of expressing all that tolerance they're known for, and so they should go. So NBC found a dozen people, literally 12, who moved to Florida with unrealistic expectations and now regret it. Hell, I could find 12 people who say Seth Meyers is funny. If I asked his writers. But hey, Florida's doing great thanks to Governor DeSantis, so NBC News feels duty-bound to treat it like a San Francisco sidewalk and take a dump on it. Speaking of San Fran, a new report from Wallet Hub ranks it as the healthiest city in the country. True, dodging street turds is great cardio. And open-air drug use must be great for the lungs. Nice work, Wallet Hub. Managing to overlook minor things like crime, homelessness, and the overdose epidemic. What the hell is Wallet Hub? Well, it's a finance company. Where is it headquartered? Florida. Fact is, no lib who wants to remain in good standing can say anything bad about a Democrat caused nightmare or anything good about a Republican success. But even Democrats don't really believe this. Just ask AOC and Gretchen Whitmer when they're vacationing in Florida. Let's welcome tonight's guest. He thinks outside the box, but enough about what he sleeps in. Founder of the LoftusParty.com, Michael Loftus. She's tall and lanky, and you can take her tips to the banky. Financial analyst Heather Zumarraga. She's sweet, petite, and won't sell pictures of her feet. New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor, Captain. And he turns a lot of heads when he snaps their necks. New York Times bestselling author, comedian, and former NBA. Michael, you travel the rails as a happy-go-lucky hobo. Do you find that SF is the best place for a shabby degenerate like yourself?
If you're a health nut.
Yeah.
Because San Francisco is so healthy. You know what city came in 5?
What?
Washington, D.C. Just so healthy. Running for your life. I think maybe that's how they're trying to frame the Biden administration, as like just cardio. Because every time you look at the price of something, you're like, oh, sweet Jesus. Oh, that's expensive. I love all of it. I just love all the whole, San Francisco is good, Florida's bad. And I read the interview with that lady who left. And I didn't think it'd be hot. You know, that's like going to a strip club and going, where'd all these come from? There's boobs everywhere. She had a horrible, she said she had an armadillo infestation. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
Right? And to me, that's like God giving you a gift. It's like, you're not having a great time in Florida. Please enjoy these armadillos. Right? God never closes a door without opening up an armadillo petting zoo.
That is so true. I had an armadillo infestation. It turns out I got it from the locker room. Heather.
A likely story.
Heather, you are a business maven?
Sure.
Okay.
Tonight. Just for tonight.
Why do you think they're going after Florida? And you, by the way, you live in Florida, don't you?
I do. They're kind of by default moved into, well, my husband's family is from there, and so we moved down to Florida. Hated Miami, love Broward County.
Yeah.
I know you said all the cops are showing Broward County, but we are big fans, we meaning the majority of Floridians, of DeSantis' policies. He just had a spring break curfew down in Miami this past week. It worked very well. The residents of Miami are very thankful. And he's banning social media for kids under 14. So it's working really well. I mean, you said 12 people moved out. I believe back in 2022, about 500,000 moved out. That's what NBC is referring to.
Yes.
But there's still a lot more people, mass exodus from New York and California, which are Democratic-run states, coming down to Florida. And you know what? The 500,000 that moved out are liberal progressives. Go ahead. You know, bye-bye. They're not coming there because of DeSantis. Whether or not...
You know, they were complaining about a lot of things, political strife and insurance rates. What state would they go to where that would be less in this day and age?
No. I'm going to Florida in a couple weeks.
Yay! Me too.
Yeah, really? Yeah, no, my Melbourne show sold out, but tickets to the Miami show are available now at therealcatdenver.com if you'd like to join me. I think Florida's great, but I think a lot of these people, the way they set up their statements was kind of like, you know, well, I was expecting this utopia of sorts, right? And they seem like people trying to run away from themselves. And if you think that moving somewhere is going to solve all your problems, you're generally not right. You're always not right if you don't Google the place first, which not knowing about like hurricanes or it being hot makes me think that maybe you didn't even like Google it.
I do that just for vacation.
Right.
I look at the weather. I look at crime.
What should I pack for this trip? Apparently they didn't do that for the move because they were bringing all their clothes anyway. I don't know.
Yeah, I do that just when I'm going to a different neighborhood in New York, Iris.
I believe you. Couple things. Okay, San Francisco was #1 because they had the most green spaces.
Yes.
Which means places where people don't live.
Yeah.
So their mountain range is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Okay? The top of the mountains that no humans can climb on look great. The oceans are full of great white sharks, so it's no one else goes in the water. So I mean, that was the thing. The whole article, which I was like, wait a minute, how are they #1? Oh, because they have more places that people don't go because they're stuck in the city running from their lives, and when they do run, they slip and fall in.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, it's a phenomenal place. The other thing, no, hold on, I appreciate you. Keep that clap in your pocket. The other thing is, they pick people who are, I'll be polite, down on their luck. So you left Kansas because you lived in a double wide because of tornadoes, and you couldn't get ahead in the Midwest. You moved to Florida and ended up in a single wide, and if you don't keep your skirt down, I'm not talking about the ones you physically wear, the one that goes around the house, you're gonna get little critters to go in there. And I get the armadillo thing, and to tell you the truth, you don't want them. They carry a lot of diseases.
Leprosy.
So you can't pet them, and your little petting zoo would be a murder zoo.
I need to wash my hands real quick.
You weren't winning there. You brought the same attitude in Florida to Cat's Point. The same problems followed you because it's not Kansas, it's not Florida. Take a guess. It's you. So it doesn't matter where you go, you got the same with Cat's Point. Now let them go.
I love this audience.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.
Tonight, tornado threat. The powerful spring storm bringing flash floods and strong winds with the danger continuing late into the night. As cleanup begins after twisters touch down in the Midwest.
I was praying so hard that the Lord would save me in my house.
CBS Evening News starts now.
Good evening, I'm Nora O'Donnell, and thank you for being with us. We are coming on the air, tracking areas bracing for severe weather tonight, including thunderstorms and tornadoes. At this hour, parts of the Ohio Valley, Indiana, Kentucky, and Ohio are under a tornado watch. Plus, tens of millions more are experiencing dangerous weather. This is the same fierce storm system that caused serious damage from Texas to West Virginia. Kentucky's governor today declaring a state of emergency after twisters demolished homes and stopped traffic after knocking down power lines. A different tornado leveled buildings in Oklahoma, destroying nearly everything in its path. More than a third of the country right now is under a weather alert. There are blizzard warnings in Michigan and flood watches in New Jersey. So with all of that news, we've got team coverage starting with Justin Michaels from our partners at the Weather Channel.
It happened fast and it was furious. Dangerous winds knocked someone at the University of Kentucky clear off their feet. Vicious storms cut a path of destruction across the Ohio Valley.
Oh, dear God, this is bad.
Mindy Broden posted this video after whipping winds tossed and flipped mobile homes in Hanging Rock.
I thought we were going to die, but our camper is fine.
In Columbus, 2 people were rescued after the Scioto River flooded.
We're in a very dangerous situation. People just need to be very, very careful.
A possible tornado touched down late afternoon in Louisville, Kentucky. The governor of Kentucky declaring a state of emergency. Traffic on this highway ground to a halt after high winds blew down power lines. Some ran for cover, escaping the fast-moving storm just in time. And this massive billboard came down on top of this vehicle in Dunbar, West Virginia. In Oklahoma, the same storm system left a mountain of debris yesterday. Omar Villafranca is there.
Last night's storm ripped through this neighborhood in Barnsdall, Oklahoma, just outside of Tulsa, and turned small buildings and homes into a pile of rubble like this behind me. The National Weather Service's preliminary report says an EF1 tornado with wind speeds up to 110 miles an hour caused all this damage. The tornado leveled 81-year-old Doris Parker's storage shed, but spared her life.
I was praying so hard that the Lord would save me in my house, I didn't think about asking him to save my garage.
Back here in the Ohio Valley, people are also starting the recovery process after the storm. Authorities here in both Kentucky and Ohio have taken this very seriously today. In fact, school districts in many places let out early, so school buses full of children wouldn't be on the road during severe weather. Nora?
Wow, that's scary. Justin Michaels, thank you very much for that update. Tonight, there is outrage at the White House after an Israeli airstrike in Gaza killed at least 7 aid workers from the World Central Kitchen. President Biden called the organization's founder, Chef Jose Andres, to express his heartbreak today. CBS's Holly Williams reports on the response from Israel's Prime Minister.
World Central Kitchen says its team members were traveling through central Gaza in 3 vehicles when they were killed by an Israeli strike. It appears their convoy was hit multiple times, including a direct strike to an armored car, though it was clearly marked with the group's name. World Central Kitchen says it was coordinating its movements with Israel's military, which has promised to investigate what happened. The US-Canadian victim hasn't been named. 3 British citizens were killed, an Australian woman, Zoni Frankham, and a Polish man, Damien Sobol. Their Palestinian driver, Saif Abu Taha, was buried today. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu called the incident tragic and unintentional in a statement, also saying, quote, "This happens in war."
These people are heroes.
The US has demanded a swift and impartial investigation with strong words for its ally.
We've impressed upon the Israelis the absolute imperative of doing more to protect innocent civilian lives, be they Palestinian children, women, and men, or be they aid workers.
World Central Kitchen was founded by Jose Andres, the award-winning Spanish-American chef, and feeds the hungry everywhere from the US to Ukraine.
Ukraine needs our help because we need them to win this war, because we need to be feeding the world.
The Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing, Andres posted on social media last night, and stop using food as a weapon. Funded by donations, his charity's been shipping hundreds of tons of food to the Gaza Strip, even building a makeshift pier, and then distributing the aid by truck.
The United Nations says at least 196 aid workers have been killed in Gaza and the West Bank since October. World Central Kitchen says it's decided to pause its operations in this region. Nora, that will be devastating for so many. Holly Williams, thank you. President Biden spoke with Chinese President Xi Jinping for nearly 2 hours today amid tensions between the 2 world powers. It's their first conversation since November, and President Biden says they spoke candidly about maintaining peace in Taiwan and the South China Sea. The leaders also discussed TikTok and the flow of fentanyl entering the U.S. and election meddling. Now to the 2024 race for the White House. President Biden's campaign is hitting the airwaves with a hard-hitting political ad focusing on abortion rights, and they're using Donald Trump's own words in an effort to warn voters. CBS's Nancy Cordes reports the former president is on the campaign trail in the Midwest, where he's focusing on another wedge issue, immigration.
Joe Biden's border bloodbath, and that's what it is. It's a bloodbath.
Despite criticism from both sides, former President Trump used the word bloodbath again today, this time to describe crimes committed by migrants.
The Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
It was 2.5 weeks ago, while talking about the future of the U.S. auto industry, that Trump warned of a bloodbath if he isn't elected in November. Today, his campaign went a step further, launching an immigration-related website, though there is no evidence that undocumented migrants commit violent crimes at higher rates than U.S. citizens.
What's the White House reaction to the use of that term bloodbath?
Our response is we have to denounce any violent rhetoric that we hear, certainly from our leaders, right?
The Biden campaign was focused today on abortion, launching this new ad one day after Florida's Supreme Court cleared the way for a 6-week abortion ban to go into effect in the state next month.
Donald Trump doesn't trust women. I do.
The state court also allowed an abortion rights measure to appear on Florida ballots come November. The Biden camp hopes that will help drive Democrats there to the polls, just as similar initiatives have in other states.
I will be voting this November. If I have to be in there with my crutches or my wheelchair, I will be there.
Trump was campaigning in another key state, Michigan, where he brought up the $175 million bond he just posted in his New York civil fraud case.
I'm the only one that has to put up a bond. You know, I put up a bond. I didn't do anything wrong.
Nancy Cordes is with us. $175 million, a lot of money. What do we know about the man who gave Trump this financial lifeline?
Nora, he is a Los Angeles billionaire. His name is Don Hankey. He is known as the king of subprime auto loans. And this isn't the first time he has come to Trump's financial rescue when many others wouldn't. It has happened at least twice before when Trump was over-leveraged, including in 2022 when he gave Trump a loan to refinance Trump Tower.
Nancy Cordes following the money. Thank you. Tonight, there are growing questions about the police shooting of a 15-year-old girl on the side of a California highway in 2022. Newly released video appears to show the teenager attempting to surrender before being killed in a shootout. CBS's Elise Preston reports California's Department of Justice is now investigating.
It's taken a year and a half for this video to be made public, one that appears to show deputies gunning down the victim of a kidnapping. Deputies had just cornered the father of 15-year-old Savannah Graziano in a high-speed chase. Officers had been on the hunt for her father, Anthony, who allegedly murdered her mother and abducted the girl. Tense moments as Savannah gets out of the truck. Deputies are heard coaxing her to safety when it all went horribly wrong. And from one officer monitoring from above. For months, the only official version was what the San Bernardino County Sheriff said just after the shooting.
Preliminarily, again, there may be some indications that the passenger of the vehicle, which we believe is Savannah, may have been also involved in some of the fire exchange.
The indication was Savannah could have fired at deputies. With this video and audio just released under the California Public Records Act, shows she was trying to get to safety, while apparently shocked by those tasked with trying to save her. Anthony Graziano was also killed in the shootout. The California Department of Justice is investigating. One retired police sergeant told CBS Los Angeles,
You had deputies over here that are firing at the truck, so you had a crossfire situation also.
Tonight, Savannah's family says they're too distraught to talk about the tragedy, but they want answers on how deputies are trained for incidents like this. Elise Preston, CBS News, Los Angeles.
We have breaking news. Let's get right to Carissa Lawson.
A powerful earthquake rocked Taiwan tonight, collapsing buildings in the city of Hualien and triggering tsunami warnings in Japan's southern island of Okinawa. Taiwan television showed images of buildings shaken off their foundations. There are reports of people trapped among the shattered buildings. The U.S. Geological Service reports the epicenter of the quake was off the island's east coast, and the Philippines has issued a tsunami warning. Rescue efforts in Taiwan have begun, even as aftershocks from the initial earthquake are taking place.
Tonight, we're getting our first look at the broken and twisted wreckage of the Francis Scott Key Bridge that's under the surface of the water. This as crews just opened a second Van Cleve has the latest on this daunting mission.
New sonar images show what can't be seen from the surface. Up to 90% of the Francis Scott Key Bridge sunk to the bottom of the shipping channel, leaving a maze of twisted, mangled steel and concrete. Work made more challenging by the storm pounding the eastern U.S. Tuesday.
The wreckage on the bottom of the 50-foot channel is far more extensive than we could have imagined.
But signs of progress. The first ship passed through one of two temporary channels now open. A larger third one is planned, but none will be able to handle large cargo ships, leaving one of the country's biggest ports largely shut down and 8,000 jobs in limbo.
It's been a little quiet.
Vinny's Cafe relies on those port workers. Fabrizio Scotto is the manager.
It's like a chain effect, really, not just us, all the businesses around I'm sure are really feeling it.
Dozens of local businesses are already applying for low-interest loans of up to $2 million to cover lost revenue stemming from the bridge collapse.
We can try to provide some measure of certainty at a time that just feels very uncertain.
While the NTSB investigation is expected to take 12 to 24 months, the Singapore-based owner of the cargo ship Dolly that struck the bridge last week filed a motion in federal court asking a Baltimore judge to rule it's not liable for any loss or damage from the fatal crash and destruction of the Key Bridge. The work at what's left of the bridge going on behind us is a 24/7 effort now, and getting that third temporary channel open is so important, the governor says, because it will allow smaller commercial vessels to be able to access the port. Each ship that gets there supports 100 port jobs. Nora?
Very important. Chris Van Cleve, thank you very much. A man is diagnosed with a rare case of bird flu, how it's linked to dairy cows, and what it means for the country's milk supply. We've got those details next. Tonight, a dairy worker in Texas has tested positive for bird flu after being in contact with sick cows who got the highly contagious virus from migrating ducks and geese. The CDC telling CBS News there has never been human-to-human spread in the U.S., but they are stepping up their posture and being vigilant. CBS's Amelia Magavro reports on what impact the outbreak could have on the country's milk supply.
Tonight, one of the largest egg producers in America temporarily stopped production after discovering bird flu in its flock of 1.6 million hens. In a statement, the company said it remains dedicated to robust biosecurity programs across its locations. This comes all after Texas officials warned dairy farmers to take precautions after cases of bird flu have been found in cows for the first time in the U.S.
They're identifying animals who may be at risk of any symptoms, and those animals are being removed from the herd to be monitored and treated separately.
Now, the Texas Department of Health revealing the highly infectious virus has spread to a dairy worker who was working with sick cows.
There was one human case in a dairy farmer, someone with close contact with an infected cow. Influenza is one of the viruses that likes to change and mutate, and we know that the virus has the potential to cause a pandemic.
The patient had conjunctivitis, was told to isolate, and is being treated with Tamiflu. 6 states are reporting dairy cows have tested positive for bird flu since the end of March, suggesting it's likely being transmitted within cattle herds. The CDC says the risk of humans getting bird flu is low, and the USDA tells CBS News, although the situation is rapidly evolving, consumers shouldn't worry, saying there is no concern about the safety of the commercial milk supply.
Consumers need to know that none of the milk entered the food chain. Wouldn't have mattered anyway because we pasteurize milk, which kills all the pathogens, and we haven't destroyed enough milk to make a dent in the milk supply, so the prices of dairy products should remain stable.
Now, the USDA is not issuing an official quarantine, but it's really urging dairy farms like the one behind me to really limit the movement and transporting of cows. And even this dairy farm is restricting access to the public and only allowing workers and dairy farm workers on its property. Nora?
But that is some good news about the milk supply. CBS's Amelia Magavro, thank you so much.
All right, a former hangout of Hollywood stars, the legendary Tropicana Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas closes its doors after 67 years. We'll have the details next. It was a historic day on the Las Vegas Strip. The Tropicana, once synonymous with glitz and glamour, closed its doors for good after welcoming guests and gamblers since 1957. In its heyday, it was a haunt for the likes of Elizabeth Taylor, Debbie Reynolds, Frank Sinatra, and Sammy Davis Jr. The iconic hotel even appeared in the 1971 James Bond movie, Diamonds Are Forever. But in Sin City, few things are forever, and the Tropicana will be imploded this fall to make way for a new Major League Baseball stadium. Wow, what will that do for traffic? Heart of America is next with a hot meal and a friendly faces at a restaurant staffed by people with developmental disabilities. Finally, our Heart of America on this World Autism Awareness Day. A majority of the 7 million Americans with intellectual and developmental disabilities have a hard time finding work. Tonight, CBS's Nikki Batiste takes us to one restaurant serving up good meals and opportunities.
Serving coffee at Café Joyeux in New York City has changed Rachel Barcelona's life.
I've been rejected so many times and told I was a burden because of my autism.
Now 27 years old, Rachel learned she is autistic when she was 3. Despite being crowned Miss Florida for America last year, she says she's had a tough time finding a job.
Take me to the moment you found out you got this job.
I was in shock. I just never had anyone believe in me like that before, and I was going to get paid too.
Café Joyeux's mission is to promote the inclusion of men and women in the community by hiring and training them to work in its cafes by managers like Sarah Parks.
You know, some of our crew are really talkative and cheerful and welcome you as soon as you come to the door. Some are a little bit more shy.
Founded by a French social entrepreneur, there are 20 Café Joyeux across Europe, all employing people who are neurodivergent. This is the first in the U.S.
That's the whole point of Café Joyeux, is to give us the opportunities to never give up.
What does Joyeux mean?
Joyful.
Joy is exactly what they are serving up here. Nikki Batiste, CBS News, New York.
All Café Joyeux profits go toward training and employing men and women with disabilities.
Tonight, the powerful storms are moving east after tornadoes left a trail of destruction in the heartland. A dangerous night ahead after a tornado outbreak in the central U.S. A state of emergency in Kentucky. A college student blown off their feet. Homes damaged in Oklahoma. Tens of millions at risk tonight from the Great Lakes to the Gulf Coast. Then the system moving east as an April nor'easter. Al Roker is here with the latest. Also tonight, the Israeli airstrike killing 7 aid workers in Gaza, including an American. Prime Minister Netanyahu calling it tragic and unintentional. The reaction from the White House saying it's outraged. Donald Trump campaigning in the Midwest after posting a $175 million bond in his civil fraud case. President Biden and China's leader Xi Jinping speaking for the first time since their November summit. The security concerns the president raised about TikTok. The new 3D images of the collapsed bridge in Baltimore, what they reveal. The American tourists who say their cruise ship stranded them on an island off Africa. Their race to get back on board. Our NBC News exclusive how a group in a dozen states is bringing the Bible to public school students.
This is NBC Nightly News with Lester Holt.
موتناش الصاروخ بده يموتنا الجوع. احنا بالنسبة لنا في الخيم مش عايشين.
Good evening. Welcome. An unsettled night ahead for potentially 53 million people living in areas at risk from another night of severe weather. Tonight, the cleanup is barely underway after violent weather barreled through parts of Oklahoma, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, and Kentucky, toppling trees and knocking out power across sections of the Midwest and Ohio Valley. At least 9 tornadoes were reported. Tonight, the severe weather risk is spreading east, with 41 million people from the Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic at risk from flash flooding. Al Roker will join me in just a moment with the forecast, but first, here's Morgan Chesky following the trail of destruction.
Tonight, drenching rains, high winds, and tornadoes wreaking havoc. The dangerous trio sparking a state of emergency in Kentucky. Striking so fast, this student was knocked right off their feet. The massive storm ripping through this mobile home. A family trapped inside, but somehow able to escape unharmed. Severe weather blasting semi-trucks off the road.
I don't know if it picked it up, moved it down the road, but it sounded like it was grinding against the blacktop.
In Oklahoma, the same system responsible for multiple overnight tornadoes.
It was just pounding the windows and the side of the house. It was crazy.
In the town of Barnesville, one reported twister sent debris everywhere, and it's blamed for ripping off roofs, including the one belonging to Sharon Horst. But fortunately, no injuries.
I'm not afraid of storms.
But this one?
Scared. I've never been so scared in my whole life.
In Illinois, an apparent tornado touching down. In Indiana, another close call.
Gravel in my head. There's glass in my head, you know, whatever. And mud. There's still mud behind my ears.
Kiana Duff heard the tornado warning seconds before the storm shattered every window in her car. Yet she walked away without even a scratch. And in Missouri, firefighters braving the elements to rescue a delivery driver trapped by rising waters.
He was in his truck, and then the water comes up so fast that he got stranded in there, so we had to rescue him by boat.
But back in Oklahoma, after a frightening night of tornadoes, the rush is on to move on.
We all gotta help one another in this time of need.
And Morgan joins us now from Barnesville, where authorities searched overnight and report everyone is accounted for.
Yeah, Lester, that's absolutely right. And when you see the damage that this community has suffered from, it is frankly incredible. One homeowner telling me he was inside a building just minutes before that storm caused it to collapse. So many people here crediting forecasters with giving them crucial minutes to seek shelter well ahead of that tornado. Lester.
All right, Morgan, thank you. And for more on the severe weather threat tonight, let's bring in Al Roker. This threat will continue through tonight and even tomorrow.
That's right, Lester. This is just what we were talking about last night at this time. You can see this large area stretching from Ohio all the way down to Mississippi. We have tornado watches in effect that last into late tonight. 41 million people under flood watches from Indiana all the way to the northeast. And we've got winter weather advisories, 10 million people from the Great Lakes all the way into New England with some blizzard warnings possible. 53 million people at risk, wind gusts of 70 miles per hour, hail. And look at this wide area of possible EF2 tornadoes from Columbus all the way down to Dothan. Atlanta is in there as well. Rainfall amounts 1 to 3 inches of rain through tomorrow. Look at this snow, Lester. In the New England area, 1 to 2 inches of snow per hour, upwards of 1.5 feet.
All right, Al, thanks very much. In the Middle East, Israel is calling it an unintentional tragedy, a series of airstrikes in Gaza that killed an American and 6 other people who work for a food relief program run by famed chef Jose Andres. Raf Sanchez reports on the fallout.
The convoy of aid vehicles had just left a Gaza warehouse, clearly marked with the logo of the World Central Kitchen, when they were hit by a series of Israeli airstrikes. Tonight, the White House among those sharply criticizing Israel.
We were outraged to learn of an IDF strike that killed a number of civilian humanitarian workers yesterday. This incident is emblematic of a larger problem.
7 aid workers were killed, including a dual U.S.-Canadian citizen. Late today, President Biden calling World Central Kitchen founder, celebrity chef Jose Andres, to offer condolences. Andres writing, the Israeli government needs to stop this indiscriminate killing. It needs to stop restricting humanitarian aid, stop killing civilians and aid workers, and stop using food as a weapon. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying Israeli forces unintentionally harmed non-combatants, and writing, our hearts go out to their families, saying Israel will investigate, and we will do everything in our power to ensure that such tragedies do not occur in the future.
It was a mistake.
Israel's top general saying the strike was a mistake following a misidentification. NBC News mapped the locations of the aid group's destroyed vehicles, finding at least 3 strikes over a 1.5 mile length of coastal road. The aid group says they coordinated their movements with the Israeli military ahead of time. We pressed an Israeli government spokesman.
Israel tells the world that its strikes are based on precise intelligence, that it takes measures to make sure there are not civilians in the area. How can that possibly be true, given what happened here?
There's a war going on. It's a war zone, and in every war, sadly, tragically, mistakes happen, and we do our very utmost to avoid those mistakes.
Among those killed yesterday, Australian Zomi Frankham. NBC's Richard Engel met her last month as she helped organize an aid drop.
The situation in Gaza is, as we all know, incredibly bad. It's going to require all of us working together.
Tonight, heartbroken colleagues carrying the bodies of the victims to the Egyptian border, preparing to leave Gaza with the prayers of those they came to help.
And World Central Kitchen is now pausing aid deliveries. Meanwhile, the UN says this was not an isolated incident. Around 200 aid workers, most Palestinian, have been killed in Gaza since the start of the war. Lester?
Raf Sanchez in Tel Aviv tonight. Thank you. Former President Trump was in key battleground states in the Midwest, highlighting the border crisis as he's dealing with new fallout from his legal cases, including an expanded gag order from a judge. Gabe Gutierrez reports.
Tonight, former President Trump on a battleground blitz with this rally in Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Do I have your word you're going to go out and vote?
And this stop in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Both states President Biden narrowly won 4 years ago. Mr. Trump zeroing in on the border crisis, highlighting the murder of 25-year-old Ruby Garcia here last month. Authorities say the suspect, her romantic partner, is an undocumented immigrant who'd previously been deported during the Trump administration.
Not one more innocent life should be lost to Biden migrant crime.
Mr. Trump slamming President Biden for rolling back restrictive Trump border policies.
Under the Trump administration, we had a tough policy of getting the bad people out.
A new survey shows 64% of Americans disapprove of President Biden's handling of the border, including 3 in 10 Democrats.
So if you don't have a border, you got problems, and they're importing them all over the country.
But studies suggest migrants don't commit crimes at higher rates than American citizens, and Democrats argue Mr. Trump is trying to exploit Garcia's death. They blame the former president for killing a bipartisan border security bill in Congress. These billboards are now going up in the crucial swing state.
Donald Trump has not wasted any time in grandstanding and clamoring for the camera to come here.
The former president also fighting legal battles on multiple fronts. The judge in his hush money trial just expanded the gag order against Mr. Trump to include the relatives of court staff after Mr. Trump on social media attacked the judge's adult daughter, who's a political consultant for Democrats. Meanwhile, Mr. Trump just posted a reduced $175 million bond in his New York civil fraud case, preventing his properties from being seized while he appeals the case.
I had to put up a bond this morning for $175 million. I did nothing wrong.
Meanwhile, Gabe, President Biden holding a critical call with China's president. Tell us about it.
Yes, Lester, President Biden spoke with China's President Xi Jinping for an hour and 45 minutes, the White House calling it candid and constructive. Among the topics, TikTok, with President Biden reiterating concerns over the app's ties to China. Lester?
All right, Gabe, thank you. In Baltimore, we're seeing the first underwater images of the bridge disaster that happened a week ago today, showing how dangerous it will be to remove the wreckage. Here's senior correspondent Tom Costello.
The U.S. Navy's 3D sonar images provide the first view yet of the Francis Scott Key Bridge now resting on the muddy bottom of the Patapsco River.
What we're seeing in the water is that the wreckage has been completely collapsed. Some people use the term pancaked.
3D provides the best visuals of the razor-sharp metal that dive teams will face as they start cutting the bridge into smaller pieces to be lifted out of the water. The water itself so cloudy and dark, divers can only see a foot or two in front of them. Shining an underwater light only reflects back like a snowstorm, making photos or video nearly impossible.
That's making it very difficult to even determine where to cut, how to cut. It's very dangerous for our divers to be able to go into this area.
Above water salvage teams have been using torches to cut and remove massive chunks of the bridge, some weighing 200 tons. As the Coast Guard has now opened 2 small channels, mostly for tugs and barges involved in salvage operations. The massive scale of the cleanup coming into clear focus. 2 SBA disaster offices now open for local businesses threatened by the disaster, as the governor presses corporate America not to give up on this region's critical economic artery.
And so making sure these businesses know that we need them, we want them, and they have to stay here in the Port of Baltimore.
4 workers remain missing in the water. Inclement weather and dangerous conditions have made it unsafe for divers to return, with those families in an agonizing wait. Lester?
All right, Tom Costello, thank you. In just 60 seconds, the dream vacation that turned to a travel nightmare. How 6 American tourists were left behind by their cruise ship on an island. What they did next. It was a dream vacation turned nightmare for 8 cruise passengers, most of them Americans, who say their ship left them stranded on a small island off of Africa. The company saying they came back too late. Here's Aaron McLaughlin.
Mad dash for passengers to catch their cruise ship, triggering a 7-day ordeal.
We've flown, it's actually 7 countries we've been in 48 hours.
Jay and Jill Campbell and 6 other Norwegian cruise passengers were on a 21-day voyage up the coast of Africa. But last Wednesday, it all went wrong for the group after they left the ship for a private excursion to the African island country of Sao Tome and Principe, but didn't make it back by the 3 p.m. deadline, and the ship left without them, their passports handed to the local port agents. Even though the couple says the private tour operator notified the captain they were going to be late, and despite the Coast Guard's attempt to get them on the ship, which was still docked.
We truly believe that, although there's a set of rules or policies that the ship may have followed, they follow those rules too rigidly.
The passengers arranged to board again in Banjul, Gambia, traveling there on their own expense. But the cruise line says the ship couldn't dock due to weather. In a statement, Norwegian Cruise told NBC News, once the guests did not make it back to the ship, we worked with them and the local port agent to assist with obtaining the necessary visas for them to rejoin at the next available port, noting the group was an hour late when the ship initially left without them. Still, the Campbells telling the Today Show,
I believe that they really forgot that they are people working in the hospitality industry.
Tonight, the cruise line saying the unexpected adventure has been resolved. All 8 guests reboarding the ship this morning in Senegal. Aaron McLaughlin, NBC News.
We have more to tell you about coming up. The program that's bringing more and more Bible study into public school students' day. Our exclusive look at how it works. Back now with our NBC News exclusive. A group in Ohio has been allowed to bring Bible study to public school students during the school day. But there are critics who fear it's eroding the boundaries between church and state. Here's Antonia Hilton.
As classmates head to the library, this group of Whitehall School District students in Ohio put on matching shirts, board a bus, and head half a mile down the road to church. There, elementary students like Emmanuel and Savannah Brady pray and study scripture. This is Lifewise Academy, a nonprofit bringing the Bible back into the public school day.
Learning really helps you learn about Jesus and what happened in the past.
How popular would you say it is at school?
Mainly, the whole class is over at Lifewise.
Lifewise started in 2018 with 2 schools. Today, it partners with more than 300 schools in a dozen states. It's funded by private donations, and it's legal, so long as it's optional off-campus, and not during essential classes like math. Though to some, it represents an increasingly blurry line between the separation of church and state. Doug Shoemaker, a Whitehall administrator, says the district has allowed this kind of program for decades.
We neither discourage participation or reward or encourage it.
Dad Daryl Brady says Lifewise lessons positively motivate Emmanuel and Savannah. Do you think church has a place in school?
Yeah, we're trying to bring churches back into schools for a long time.
Some of these sessions take place when library periods would be happening in school.
Mm-hmm.
Are you worried about your kids missing out on that experience?
Not at all. There's 39 books in the Old Testament and 27 books in the New Testament.
Founder Joel Penton says he saw a growing need, including those unable to afford private Christian schools. In this area, about 50% of the students take part in Lifewise. What do you think that means for the other 50%? Do you think they feel left out?
I wouldn't characterize it that way. Kids go in different directions all the time. On the playground, some kids play kickball, other kids will go to the monkey bars.
This is a little different because these kids are going to physically be gone.
Sure. Hopefully Lifewise is an attractive thing that people will want to participate in, but we certainly don't ever want to put any undue pressure.
But Ohio mom Sarah Myers says that Lifewise does exert pressure. She's a Christian with a daughter in a school partnering with them. She won't ever let her take part, though.
It is all above board until it's not. No school staff person does anything until they do.
Chapters promised ice cream or popcorn parties if kids got their friends to sign up. Another Ohio mom sent NBC News this note her child received from a classmate on Lifewise letterhead, pre-written to say, "My favorite part of class is," the classmate writing everything and inviting the child to join Lifewise. Lifewise told NBC News that like many youth groups, they offer incentives for students and families to learn more, and that they are no different from other organizations that advocate for the policies they believe in. What do you think Lifewise is trying to do?
Influence, slant, if you will, public schools.
Joel says he pays little attention to critics.
In the United States, there are 13,000 public school districts. There are 50 million public school students.
And he hopes to make biblical lessons available to every one of them. Antonia Hilton, NBC News, Columbus, Ohio.
That's nightly news for this Tuesday. Thank you for watching. I'm Lester Holt. Please take care of yourself and each other. Good night. Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.
Right now, the possibility of long-track tornadoes, already multiple reported twisters. The system moving into the east next, heavy rain, destructive winds. This will affect travel. Tonight, the tornado threat right now, the possibility of long-track tornadoes, already multiple reported twisters. The system moving into the east next, heavy rain, destructive winds. This will affect travel all along I-95, Washington, D.C., up through New York City. Millions of Americans on alert tonight for these potential long-track tornadoes from Kentucky to Indiana to Ohio. Already a state of emergency tonight in Kentucky where 3 EF1 tornadoes have already been confirmed. Strong winds at the University of Kentucky. The dangerous weather threat from Mississippi up into the northeast. New York City bracing for tomorrow. Heavy rain and inland, several inches of snow. Possible flooding from Washington up to Boston. Rob Marciano timing it out. Overseas tonight, the images, the aftermath. Tonight, Israel facing tough questions after a deadly airstrike killing 7 aid workers delivering food in Gaza, among them an American citizen. Their clearly marked convoy hit 3 times by the Israeli military while traveling through an area considered safe. They had alerted the Israelis beforehand. Tonight, what Prime Minister Netanyahu is now saying, drawing even more outrage for his words. The White House on this tonight, Rick Clement in Israel. Here at home tonight, the 15-year-old girl, the Amber Alert authorities say she was shot dead in the crossfire. And now the newly released video raising new questions about this case, this deadly deputy shooting. New images coming in tonight up close. The moment dozens of heavily armed agents swarm Sean Diddy Combs' mansion. His 2 sons detained at gunpoint, what it shows. Abortion rights now front and center, and will it put Florida in play in the presidential election? Tonight, President Biden blasting the new 6-week abortion ban in Florida, one of the strictest in the country before many women know they're pregnant. The president calling it outrageous, and Donald Trump on the campaign trail saying suburban housewives actually like Donald Trump. Trump saying they'll have a statement on abortion next week. Tonight, our team with the Army Corps of Engineers for an up-close look at that massive cargo ship that brought down the bridge at Baltimore. The American couple stranded on an African island by a cruise liner because they got back to the ship too late. Tonight, news on the couple and 6 other passengers. The stunning images, the men clinging to the side of a cliff in California. They used night vision to help save him. He was dangling. You could hear the ocean below. The truck smashing into a bridge on I-95 near Philadelphia. You'll see the images. And tonight, we remember an actor who made so many people laugh. You'll know his movies.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening. It is great to have you with us here on a Tuesday night. We begin tonight with a potentially dangerous night ahead. Meteorologists warning of the possibility of long-track tornadoes across multiple states, then heavy rain and winds moving into the east. More than 57 million Americans on alert at this hour. Tornado watches in effect in multiple states, including the threat of those intense long-track tornadoes on the ground for a long time. Severe storms right into the night from the Florida Panhandle to Ohio. A state of emergency already in Kentucky where at least 3 EF1 tornadoes already confirmed. And as I mentioned, this then moves into the east. Tonight, look at this. The images, the video showing a tornado forming just west of Louisville. At least 9 reported tornadoes from this system. Drone video after powerful storms rolled through southern Illinois, leaving major damage behind there. A traffic camera in Lawrence County, Ohio, showing conditions worsening. Powerful winds and blinding rain. Traffic coming to a halt there. Tornado warnings tonight in Charleston, West Virginia. Warehouse workers there, you can see right there, racing for shelter during the storms. Again, much of this now hits in the overnight hours ahead, so Rob Marciano will time this out for us. And ABC's Trevor Ault with the images already coming in. Trevor is in Cincinnati tonight, where there is a tornado watch in effect right now.
Tonight, a dangerous multi-day severe weather outbreak hammering the heartland with full force. A confirmed dangerous tornado bearing down on the Clark Memorial Bridge over the Ohio River near Louisville.
That is a tornado on the ground. There is no doubt about that. These are winds in excess of 100 miles per hour.
Winds howling through the doors at the University of Kentucky. Watch again as that student is knocked over. This drone video showing a tornado taking shape and touching down just west of Louisville. Outside Lexington in Salvisa, Kentucky, this big rig flipped on its side. Brian Winters heard it outside his window.
I don't know if it picked it up, moved it down the road, but it sounded like it was grinding against the blacktop, so it's scariest I've been in a long time.
A wall of straight-line wind and rain tearing through Charleston, West Virginia, sending these warehouse workers running for cover. More than 130,000 homes and businesses in West Virginia losing power. Storm striking before dawn southeast of St. Louis. Daylight revealing downed trees and flattened buildings in Williamson County, Illinois.
Wow, you can see the rotation in it.
This funnel spotted near Oklahoma City, and northeast of their homes flattened in the town of Barnsdall. Streets piled with debris. First responders using flashlights to search for anyone trapped as flashing police vehicles light up the blacked-out neighborhood. And David, they have just sounded the tornado sirens here in Cincinnati as this storm continues to move in. There's a tornado warning in Kentucky over here right on the other side of the river, and there is a threat of long-track tornadoes heading into the night.
David, Trevor and the team, get inside. Thank you. Let's get right to senior meteorologist Rob Marciano with us live tracking the storms for us into these overnight hours. Hey, Rob.
Hi, David. That is a potent cell just to their south. It's one of several ongoing tornado warnings within those tornado watches, some of which are now extended past midnight. We've got flood watches up as well that push to the northeast. You can't get rid of the rain, and the convective outlook shows the threat for severe weather all the way down to the Gulf Coast tonight, but long track, most destructive tornadoes, Kentucky, up the Ohio River Valley. And our computer models show that next explosion of storms through midnight tonight. And then here we go, double barrel low tomorrow. We get cold air wrapping around. It's going to be windy. It's going to be rainy. Flood watches are posted for parts of New York up through Connecticut, and snow's wrapping around the northern side of this. Next 6 to 12 inches, maybe 1 to 2 feet across northern New England before it's all done come Friday and Saturday. This storm, David, has everything.
Yeah, a dangerous mess of a storm indeed. Rob Marciano with us as well. Thanks, Rob. The major story overseas tonight, the deadly Israeli airstrike killing 7 aid workers delivering food to Gaza. One of the workers, a U.S. citizen. You will see the images here tonight, what was left behind. You can actually see the convoy clearly marked. It was struck 3 times. They had alerted the Israelis beforehand. The White House tonight saying it is outraged. Prime Minister Netanyahu calling it unintentional, saying it happens in war. Drawing outrage for his words, too. Rick Clement from Israel tonight.
Tonight, Israel facing mounting questions over why 3 clearly marked aid vehicles from the World Central Kitchen were targeted in an IDF airstrike, killing 7 workers delivering supplies. The aid group says the workers coordinated their movements with the Israeli military and were traveling in a 3-car convoy in an area deemed safe after unloading more than 100 tons of food to this warehouse brought to Gaza. ABC News confirming the convoy was then struck 3 times. A charred van, another with a large hole in the roof where you can clearly see their logo, are the images now sparking worldwide criticism. The World Central Kitchen calling the incident unforgivable and immediately halting operations. The victims, Jacob Flickinger, a US-Canadian dual national, a Palestinian, and citizens from Australia, Poland, and 3 from the UK. In his first comments following the attack, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu launching an investigation, but saying it was unintentional and that it, quote, happens during war. Hours later, taking a softer approach, saying their hearts go out to their families and home countries. Tonight, the White House outraged.
This incident is emblematic of a larger problem and evidence of why distribution of aid in Gaza has been so challenging.
These people are heroes. They run into the fire, not away from it.
Despite the deepening tensions between President Biden and Netanyahu, just days ago, Biden approved the transfer of additional weapons to Israel, including 2,000-pound bombs, which have been connected to mass casualties. And David, just coming in now, the World Central Kitchen releasing these images of all 7 victims of that aid attack. You see them there, including the U.S. dual citizen. David?
They do just extraordinary work, the bravery of these aid workers trying to get food in, not only in Gaza, but around the world. Rick Leonard tonight, thank you. Back here in the U.S. tonight, and major new questions in a case involving the deadly shooting of a 15-year-old daughter. She had been part of an Amber Alert, but then authorities say she was shot in the crossfire. Tonight, newly released images raising serious new questions. And here's ABC's Victor Oquendo.
Tonight, newly released video showing the fatal shooting of a California teen caught in the crossfire during a shootout with law enforcement in September 2022. 15-year-old Savannah Graziano was believed kidnapped by her father, authorities issuing an Amber Alert for the teen hours after they say her father murdered her mother. A day later, San Bernardino Sheriff's deputies spotting her father's white pickup truck.
There's a white pickup truck, probably going 100 miles an hour. East.
45-year-old Anthony Graziano leading law enforcement on a 70-mile pursuit, the sheriff's helicopter recording from above.
We have the camera on the suspect.
Deputies and witnesses reporting shots fired out of the driver and passenger sides of the vehicle. The truck getting stuck in an embankment near I-15 in Hesperia. Deputies exchanging fire.
Shots are fired, shots are fired. Continue to shoot at the deputies.
Savannah seen exiting from the passenger side, wearing tactical gear and a helmet, dropping to the ground, then walking towards law enforcement. A deputy calling her over. Ordering the others to stop firing. Tonight, we're learning that audio from his belt recorder, not broadcast over the radio. Savannah was unarmed and shot, taken to the hospital where she later died. Her father pronounced dead at the scene, where multiple weapons and ammunition were found. The sheriff initially said Savannah participated in the shooting, but can no longer confirm that. Again, they did not find any weapons on her, and the sheriff is not commenting further. The California Department of Justice is investigating. David?
Victor Oquendo tonight. Victor, thank you. We turn now to the raids of Sean Diddy Combs' homes, and tonight new images now emerging up close. The moment dozens of heavily armed agents swarm Combs' mansion, 2 sons detained at gunpoint. Here's our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, this dramatic video released by the ex-girlfriend of rap mogul Sean Diddy Combs showing dozens of heavily armed federal agents descending on his home in Los Angeles. Combs' ex-girlfriend says the heavily edited video, which has been sped up, is evidence of an overzealous and overtly militarized force used against her 2 sons, Justin and Christian, who were at the residence at the time. And she goes on to write, if these were the sons of a non-black celebrity, they would not have been handled with the same aggression. ABC News has learned that the raids on Combs' homes in Los Angeles and Miami are part of an ongoing federal investigation of the Southern District of New York into human trafficking. Combs has been accused in lawsuits in recent months of sexual assault and sex trafficking, allegations which he has denied. And he has complained about the use of excessive force and vows to fight to clear his name.
This operation looks like a textbook when you have intelligence to suggest you may run into violence, guns, drugs, or dogs.
David, so far Combs has not been charged with any crime. Federal authorities have yet to respond to allegations of excessive force. David?
Pierre Thomas, live in Washington. Pierre, thank you. We turn now to the race for the White House. Abortion rights front and center, and will it put the state of Florida in play? Tonight, President Biden blasting the state's new 6-week abortion ban, one of the strictest in the country before many women know they're pregnant. The president calling it outrageous. Former President Trump on the campaign trail today saying suburban housewives like Trump. Rachel Scott in Wisconsin.
Tonight, President Biden denouncing the Florida State Supreme Court's ruling, clearing the way for the state to ban abortion at 6 weeks, before most women even know they're pregnant, calling it outrageous. The president saying the law puts the health and lives of millions of women at risk. The Biden's campaign now seizing on the court's other major decision, allowing Florida voters a chance to protect abortion rights on the November ballot. The campaign saying that now puts Florida in play for the presidential election. They're keenly aware abortion rights has won in all 6 states where it has been on the ballot, including in conservative states like Kansas, Kentucky, and Ohio. Donald Trump often boasts about appointing 3 of the justices who voted to overturn Roe v. Wade. But today, he didn't want to talk about the Florida's court ruling. Today in Battleground, Michigan, Trump making his own appeal to women voters.
You know, the suburban housewives actually like Donald Trump. You know why? Because I'm the one that's going to keep them safe. They like to say, well, the suburban housewives, I don't know. I think I do great with the suburban housewives because they want to remain safe.
Trump trying to turn the focus to the border and what he is now calling migrant crime.
Every state is now a border state. Every town is now a border town because Joe Biden has brought the carnage and chaos and killing from all over the world and dumped it straight into our backyards.
But in fact, data shows undocumented immigrants are actually less likely to commit violent crimes than American citizens. Biden campaign pointing out that Trump himself pressured congressional Republicans to block the toughest bipartisan border security bill in generations because he wanted to run on the issue in November. President Biden urging Republicans to support the measure.
Look, folks, we have a simple choice. We can fight about fixing the border or we can fix it. I'm ready to fix it. Send me the border bill now.
David, back to the issue of abortion rights. We know it will be on the ballot in Florida tonight. Advocates say they have enough support to put it on the ballot in Arizona as well. We can see the same thing happen in nearly a dozen other states, including battlegrounds like Nevada and Pennsylvania, David.
So abortion rights could be on the ballot in Arizona as well this November. We can hear you barely over the campaign rally behind you beside the Times. Rachel, thank you. Now to Baltimore tonight, where our team with the Army Corps of Engineers today got our closest look yet at that massive cargo ship that brought that bridge down. The damage up close, extraordinary to see. Terry Moran, again tonight.
Aboard a U.S. Army Corps of Engineers survey vessel, we make our way across the water to the scene of the deadly disaster. And there it is. We can nearly touch it. The Dolly, the ship that destroyed Baltimore's Francis Scott Key Bridge. Up close to it, you see the sheer scale and the violence of what happened here. How the bridge came down on the ship, destroying so much of the bow. Nearly 9 million pounds of debris crashing down on that ship. We see the around-the-clock salvage operation. Crews and cranes painstakingly cutting and removing the wreckage piece by piece. You see how they're already cutting parts away. That's some of the work that has already been done. But when you look down, you see how much work remains. New 3D sonar images show the dangers lurking underwater, jagged steel girders tangled together.
Every cut has to be assessed and engineer a solution for that.
Every single piece you're going to have to study before you cut.
That's true. And both above the water and below the water as well.
You sense out there the tremendous forces of the moment the bridge collapsed. And something else. We were very mindful that just a few feet from us, the bodies of those 4 construction workers remained trapped in the wreckage beneath the waters. David?
We think about those workers' families tearing around again tonight. Thanks, Terry. Tonight, part of I-95 near Philadelphia partially closed after a truck slammed into a bridge there. The truck hitting an overhead railway bridge. Crews racing to repair the damage over I-95 in the Port Richmond area. The truck carrying an oversized load. Northbound lanes expected to remain closed for several days. When we come back tonight, the American couple stranded on an African island. They say the cruise line said they were late and left. What's happened now? We remember an actor tonight. He made so many people laugh. And look at this, stunning images. The man clinging to the side of a cliff in California, night vision. He's dangling. You could hear the ocean below. How they got to him in a moment. Tonight, the dramatic cliff rescue in Sonoma County, California, night vision showing the hiker about 120 feet down the cliff, clinging to the side, dangling about 40 feet above the ocean. Rescuers could hear the waves using a helicopter to then pull him to safety. Extraordinary. Tonight, an American couple and 6 other cruise ship passengers trying to rejoin their cruise ship after claiming they were left stranded in Africa. Jay and Jill Campbell say their group is late coming back from an excursion. They say the crew refused to let them board on an island, trying to rejoin that cruise now in Senegal. When we come back tonight, remembering a comedic actor, and you will definitely know his movies. Tonight, a passing to note here, actor Joe Flaherty has died, known for his roles on SCTV, Freaks and Geeks, Happy Gilmore, Adam Sandler tonight, calling him the nicest guy you could know, genius of a comedian. Flaherty was 82. When we come back here tonight, saying goodbye to a famous hotel on the Vegas Strip. Elvis, Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, all helped make it famous. Finally tonight, the end of an era in Vegas.
The Tropicana Hotel is proud to present.
They called it the Tiffany of the Strip. Its extravagant shows and 60-foot fountain, the Tropicana Hotel was the most expensive, the most lavish for a time when it opened in 1957.
The gaming halls of Las Vegas.
James Bond famously sang the night in 1971's Diamonds Are Forever.
Where the hell do you think you're going?
I hear the Hotel Tropicana is quite comfortable.
Elvis in 1964's Viva Las Vegas. It was a favorite of the Rat Pack while in Vegas. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, Joey Bishop, and Eddie Fisher was among the hotel's first acts, there with his wife, actress Debbie Reynolds, and later with Elizabeth Taylor. Tonight, after 67 years of glitz and spectacle, the Tropicana closing its doors, a Vegas Strip landmark, now making way for a new stadium, leaving behind decades of Vegas memories. If those walls can talk. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.
Thank you for watching and privilege of your time. This is Amir Shakil 5858. I am Amir Goodman. Have a good life.